The firelight from the camp flickered against the canyon walls when Cole Dalton heard the soft humming coming from beyond the rocky outcrop, and he knew immediately that someone else was awake at this ungodly hour when even the coyotes had settled down for the night. He had been riding for 3 weeks straight, herding cattle from Texas to Colorado through some of the roughest terrain the West had to offer, and every bone in his body ached for rest. But sleep eluded him tonight, just as it had for the past several nights, ever since they crossed into Colorado territory. The year was 1878, and the summer heat had finally broken into a pleasant coolness that made the high altitude bearable. Cole pushed himself up from his bedroll, his 24 years of living showing in the careful way he moved, respecting the bruises and sore muscles that came with his profession. He grabbed his hat and walked quietly past the sleeping forms of the other ranch hands, his boots crunching softly on the gravelly earth. When he rounded the outcrop, he stopped dead in his tracks. A young woman lay on her back atop a flat boulder, her arms stretched out beside her as she gazed up at the vast expanse of stars overhead. Her dark hair spread around her head like a halo, and she was dressed in a simple cotton dress that had seen better days. She did not seem to notice him at first, too absorbed in whatever task occupied her mind. Cole cleared his throat gently, not wanting to startle her, and she turned her head toward him with surprising calm. "Evening," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Did not mean to intrude. Just heard someone out here and wanted to make sure everything was all right." She sat up slowly, brushing her hair back from her face. Even in the dim starlight, Cole could see that she was pretty, with delicate features and eyes that seemed to hold a deep sadness. She looked to be around 20 or 21, though there was something about her bearing that suggested she had lived through more than her years should have allowed. "I am fine," she replied, her voice soft but clear. "I could not sleep. I hope I did not disturb your camp." "Not at all," Cole said, stepping a bit closer. "Mind if I ask what you are doing out here by yourself? This is not exactly safe country for a woman alone, especially at night." She smiled slightly, though it did not reach her eyes. "I am counting stars," she said simply. "Or rather, I am looking for one particular star." Cole tilted his head, intrigued despite himself. "Looking for a star? That is a new one. Most folks I know try to avoid looking at them too long, says it makes you feel too small." "Perhaps I want to feel small," she replied, then shook her head as if dismissing her own words. "I am sorry. That must sound strange. My name is Thea Tucker. I am traveling to Golden with my aunt. We are camped just over that ridge there." "Cole Dalton," he introduced himself, moving closer still until he could lean against the boulder. "We are headed through Golden ourselves, taking cattle up to the railroad. So this particular star you are looking for, what makes it special?" Thea looked back up at the sky, and Cole watched as her expression shifted into something more vulnerable, more raw. "It is my mother's star," she said quietly. "She died when I was 12 back in Kansas. The night before she passed, she was so weak she could barely speak. But she took me outside and pointed to a star. She said that no matter where I went, no matter how lost I felt, I could always find her there. She said she would watch over me from that star." Cole felt something tighten in his chest. He had lost his own mother when he was 16, and though 8 years had passed, the pain still caught him off guard sometimes. "I am sorry for your loss," he said, meaning it. "Did you remember which star she pointed to?" "That is the problem," Thea said, and now her voice trembled slightly. "I thought I did. For years I was certain I knew exactly which one it was, but now I am not sure anymore. I have been looking at the sky every night for the past 2 weeks, and none of them feel right. None of them feel like her." She fell silent, and Cole could see her blinking rapidly, fighting back tears. He understood that feeling, that desperate need to hold on to something tangible when everything else had slipped away. Without thinking too much about it, he climbed up onto the boulder beside her and settled down, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Tell me about her," he said. "Your mother." What was she like? Thea glanced at him, surprised by the request, but after a moment she began to speak. She was kind, the kind of kind that people took advantage of, if that makes sense. She would give away our last bit of food if someone needed it more. My father used to get so frustrated with her, but he loved her desperately. They had that kind of love that you read about in books, the kind that makes you believe in something bigger than yourself. What happened to your father? Cole asked gently. He died 2 years after she did, Thea said. Pneumonia took him. After that, I went to live with my aunt in St. Louis. She is good to me, but it is not the same. We are coming to Golden because she inherited a small house there from a cousin who passed. She thinks the fresh air and the quiet will do us both good. Cole nodded, absorbing this information. I grew up in Golden, he said. Left when I was 18 to work the cattle drives, but I still think of it as home. It is a good town, growing fast since they found silver in the mountains nearby. You will like it there, I think. I hope so, Thea replied. I feel like I have been drifting for so long. Maybe Golden will be the place where I finally feel settled again. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both looking up at the stars. Cole found himself wanting to help this woman, this stranger who had appeared in his night like something out of a dream. There was something about her sadness that called to him, made him want to ease it somehow. You know, he said slowly, maybe the reason you cannot find the right star is because you are looking for it the same way you did when you were 12. But you are not 12 anymore. You have grown and changed. Maybe your mother's star has changed too, or maybe the way you see it has. Thea turned to look at him fully, and in her eyes he saw a flicker of something, hope perhaps, or understanding. That is a beautiful thought, she said, but I am not sure how to look at it differently. What if you stopped trying so hard? Cole suggested. What if you just let yourself feel whatever you feel when you look up there and trust that your mother is watching over you from all of them, not just one? A tear slipped down Thea's cheek, and she wiped it away quickly. You are very wise for a cowboy, she said with a small laugh that was half sob. I have my moments, Cole replied with a gentle smile. Though mostly I am just good at getting cattle where they need to go and avoiding rattlesnakes. This earned him a genuine laugh from Thea, and the sound of it did something to Cole's heart that he could not quite name. He realized with a start that he wanted to hear that laugh again, wanted to be the one who brought light back into those sad eyes. They talked for another hour, their conversation ranging from silly childhood memories to deeper philosophical questions about life and death and everything in between. Cole learned that Thea loved to read, that she had taught herself to sew and could make a dress from scratch, that she had always wanted to see the ocean but had never traveled farther west than Kansas before this trip. Thea learned that Cole had 2 younger sisters who still lived in Golden, that he sent most of his earnings back to help support them, that he had once wanted to be a teacher, but circumstances had pushed him toward ranch work instead. When the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, Cole reluctantly pushed himself to his feet. I should get back before the boys wake up and wonder where I have gone, he said. But I am glad I found you out here tonight, Thea Tucker. I am glad too, Thea replied, standing as well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for understanding. Will I see you in Golden? Cole asked, trying to keep his tone casual despite the sudden urgency he felt. I mean, we should be passing through town in about 4 days, and if you are going to be living there, perhaps I could call on you sometime. Thea's cheeks flushed pink in the growing light. I would like that very much, she said softly. My aunt's house is on Silver Street, number 42. Silver Street, 42, Cole repeated, committing it to memory. I will find you, I promise. He started to walk away, then turned back. Thea, I think your mother would be proud of you. I think she is up there in all those stars, smiling down at the strong, kind woman you have become. Before she could respond, he tipped his hat and walked back toward camp, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the thin mountain air. Behind him, He heard Thea call out softly, "Thank you, Cole Dalton." The next 4 days passed with agonizing slowness for Cole. He found himself thinking about Thea constantly, replaying their conversation in his mind, imagining what it would be like to see her again. The other ranch hands noticed his distraction and teased him mercilessly, but he took it in good stride. His friend Jack, a weathered cowboy of 35 who had been riding with Cole for 3 years, finally pulled him aside one evening. "You have got that look," Jack said knowingly. "That look that says a woman has gotten under your skin." Cole did not bother denying it. "Met someone back at that canyon camp," he admitted. "A woman named Thea. She is moving to Golden." Jack let out a low whistle. "Well, I will be." Cole Dalton, the man who swore he would never settle down because the trail was his true love, has finally met his match. "I did not say that," Cole protested, but even he could hear the lack of conviction in his voice. The truth was, something had shifted in him that night under the stars. For the first time in years, he found himself thinking about a future that did not involve endless cattle drives and sleeping under the open sky. He found himself imagining a home, a family, a life built with someone else. When they finally reached Golden on a warm afternoon in late July, Cole could barely contain his impatience. The town had grown since he had last been here 6 months ago. New buildings lined the main street, and there seemed to be twice as many people bustling about their business. He helped get the cattle into the holding pens at the edge of town, collected his pay from the trail boss, and then made his excuses about needing to visit his sisters. That part at least was true. He had not seen Mary and Sarah in months, and he knew they would be disappointed if he did not stop by their small house on the east side of town. Mary, at 22, was the middle child and had recently become engaged to a blacksmith named Robert. Sarah, just turned 19, was working as a school teacher and seemed to have a new suitor every time Cole came home. The girls squealed with delight when he knocked on their door, pulling him inside and immediately bombarding him with questions about his journey. Their little house was neat and cheerful, filled with handmade quilts and wildflowers in mason jars. Cole felt a pang of guilt that he could not be here more often for them, but they both seemed to be doing well. "You look different," Mary said suspiciously as she poured him coffee. "There is something different about you, Cole. What is it?" "Can a man not visit his sisters without getting interrogated?" Cole replied, but he could not help the smile that tugged at his lips. Sarah gasped dramatically. "He has met someone. Look at that smile, Mary." "That is definitely the smile of a man who has met someone." Cole shook his head, but he found himself telling them about Thea, about finding her counting stars, and their conversation that had stretched into dawn. Both of his sisters listened with rapt attention, and when he finished, they exchanged knowing looks. "You have to go see her right now," Sarah insisted. "Today. Do not wait another minute." "I cannot just show up on her doorstep," Cole said, though part of him wanted to do exactly that. "I should give her time to settle in. She just arrived in town. She probably has 100 things to do." "Nonsense," Mary said firmly. "If I had just arrived in a strange town and a handsome cowboy I had connected with showed up at my door, I would be thrilled. Trust me on this, Cole. Go see her." After enduring another 15 minutes of enthusiastic encouragement from his sisters, Cole finally agreed. He washed up, changed into his cleanest shirt, and set off to find Silver Street. His heart hammered in his chest as he walked through town, and he found himself suddenly nervous in a way he had not been since he was a teenage boy, asking a girl to dance at a barn raising. Silver Street was a quiet residential area with small but well-kept houses lining both sides. He found number 42 easily enough, a modest cottage with a small front porch and flower boxes in the windows. Taking a deep breath, he walked up the steps and knocked on the door. A woman in her 50s answered, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked Cole up and down with a critical eye. "Can I help you, young man?" "Good afternoon, madam," Cole said, removing his hat. "My name is Cole Dalton. I am looking for Miss Thea Tucker. I met her on the trail a few days ago, and she mentioned she would be at this address." The woman's expression softened slightly. I am Agatha Tucker, Thea's aunt. She mentioned meeting a cowboy on the journey here. Said you were kind to her. I hope so, madam, Cole replied. Is she available? I would like to call on her, if that would be all right. Agatha studied him for another long moment, then nodded and stepped back. Come in, I will get her. But I will tell you right now, Mr. Dalton, my niece has been through more than enough heartache in her young life. If you are not serious in your intentions, it would be better for everyone if you turned around right now. I understand, madam, Cole said, meeting her gaze steadily. And I can promise you that my intentions are entirely honorable. Agatha nodded once more and disappeared into the back of the house. Cole stood in the small parlor, his hat clutched in his hands, his nerves jangling. Then he heard light footsteps, and Thea appeared in the doorway. She was wearing a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes, and her dark hair was pinned up loosely. When she saw him, her face lit up with a smile that made Cole's breath catch in his throat. Cole, she said, and there was genuine joy in her voice. You came. I promised I would, he replied. I hope I am not intruding. Your aunt said you mentioned me. Thea's cheeks flushed pink. I might have told her about the kind cowboy who helped me look for stars, she admitted. Would you like to sit down? I could make some tea. They settled into the small parlor, and Agatha made herself scarce, though Cole suspected she was hovering somewhere nearby. For a few minutes they made polite small talk, but then Thea leaned forward slightly. I have to tell you something, she said. After you left that morning, I stayed on the boulder until the sun was fully up, and I stopped trying so hard, just like you suggested. I just looked at the stars as they faded, and I thought about my mother and everything she taught me. And I realized that you were right. She is not just in one star. She is in all of them. She is in the morning light and the evening breeze, and in the kindness of strangers who take time to listen to a lost girl counting stars. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but she was smiling. You gave me such a gift that night, Cole. You gave me permission to stop searching for something I could never find and to start appreciating what I already have. Cole felt his throat tighten with emotion. I am glad, he said quietly. You deserve peace, Thea. You deserve happiness. So do you, she replied. And the way she looked at him made Cole feel like maybe, just maybe, they could find those things together. Over the following weeks, Cole called on Thea as often as his work would allow. He had signed on with a local ranch just outside Golden, which meant he could spend his evenings in town. They took long walks through the streets and along the creek that ran through town. They attended a church social together where Cole introduced Thea to his sisters, and half the town seemed to take note of the cowboy and the newcomer who could not stop smiling at each other. Thea told him more about her life, about the loneliness she had felt in St. Louis, about how she had sometimes wondered if she would ever feel truly at home anywhere again. Cole told her about the freedom he had found on the trail, but also about the loneliness of that life, the way it could hollow you out if you let it. One evening in early August, they were sitting on the porch of her aunt's house watching the sunset when Thea said quietly, My aunt wants to open a dress shop. She is very talented with a needle and thread, and I am learning from her. We think Golden is growing fast enough to support a business like that. That is a wonderful idea, Cole said. My sister Mary is getting married in October, and she would probably love to have a dress made special for the occasion. Thea's eyes lit up. Really? Oh, that would be perfect. It would be our first commission. They fell into comfortable silence, and Cole found himself reaching for Thea's hand. She did not pull away, instead lacing her fingers through his. The touch sent warmth spreading through Cole's chest. Thea, he said softly, I know we have not known each other very long, just over a month now, but I need you to know that what I feel for you is real. When I am with you, I feel like I have finally found what I have been searching for all these years on the trail. Thea turned to face him fully, her eyes searching his face. I feel the same way, she whispered. It scares me sometimes how much I feel. I have been so afraid of opening my heart again after losing my parents, after feeling so lost for so long. But when I am with you, Cole, I feel brave. I feel like maybe I can risk it. Cole lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. Then let us be brave together, he said. The weeks turned into months, and their relationship deepened. Cole found excuses to be in town as much as possible, and when he had to be at the ranch, he counted the hours until he could see Thea again. Agatha, who had been skeptical at first, gradually warmed to Cole, especially after she saw how happy Thea was when he was around. The dress shop opened in September, and it was an immediate success. Agatha's skill with fabric and design, combined with Thea's eye for detail, made them a formidable team. They dressed half the women in golden for various occasions, and word of their talent spread to neighboring towns. Mary's wedding in October was a beautiful affair, and she wore a stunning dress that Thea and Agatha had created. Cole stood up as his sister's best man, and throughout the ceremony, his eyes kept finding Thea in the crowd. He knew with absolute certainty that he wanted to marry this woman. He wanted to build a life with her, to wake up beside her every morning and fall asleep beside her every night. After the wedding, during the dance that followed, Cole held Thea close as they swayed to the music. I love you, he said into her ear, the words coming as naturally as breathing. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. Thea pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. I love you too, she replied, and the joy in her voice made Cole's heart soar. I love you so much it sometimes overwhelms me. They kissed then, right there in the middle of the dance floor, with half the town watching, and Cole did not care one bit. Let them all see. Let them all know that he had found his match, his partner, his home. A week later, Cole bought a ring from the jeweler in town. It was simple but elegant, a silver band with a small diamond that caught the light beautifully. He carried it in his pocket for 2 days, waiting for the right moment. Then, on a cool evening in late October, he took Thea back to the spot where they had first met, the canyon camp where she had been counting stars. They had ridden out together on horseback, bringing a blanket and some food for a picnic dinner. As the sun set and the stars began to emerge one by one, Cole spread the blanket on the same boulder where Thea had been lying that first night. Do you remember? He asked as they settled down together. It was right here that I found you, looking for your mother's star. I remember everything about that night, Thea said, leaning against his shoulder. I remember thinking that I had never felt more lost in my entire life. And then you appeared, and suddenly I did not feel quite so alone. Cole took a deep breath, his heart racing. Thea, that night changed my life. Finding you here, talking with you, getting to know you, falling in love with you, it has all been the greatest adventure of my life. I thought I loved the freedom of the trail, but what I really love is the freedom I feel with you. The freedom to be myself completely, to share my thoughts and dreams and fears without holding back. He shifted so he could look at her properly and reached into his pocket. Thea Tucker, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to count stars together when we cannot sleep. I want to build a home together and raise a family together and grow old together. Will you marry me? He opened the small box, and the diamond glinted in the starlight. Thea's hands flew to her mouth, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Yes, she breathed. Yes, Cole, of course I will marry you. Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he was kissing her, holding her close, feeling like his heart might burst from happiness. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and grinning, Thea looked up at the sky. Do you see that star right there? She said, pointing to a particularly bright one overhead. That is my mother's star, I know it is, and I know she is happy for us right now. Cole followed her gaze and nodded. I see it, he said, and I think you are right. I think she has been watching over you all along, guiding you exactly where you needed to be. They lay back on the blanket, wrapped in each other's arms, and watched the stars for hours. They made plans for their future, discussing where they would live and how many children they wanted and what they would name them. They talked about Cole's work at the ranch and Thea's work at the dress shop and how they would balance it all. But mostly they just held each other, marveling at how lucky they were to have found each other in this vast, wild country. They married in December of 1878 in a small ceremony at the church in Golden with both of Cole's sisters and Thea's aunt in attendance, along with what seemed like half the town. Thea wore a dress she had made herself, a beautiful cream-colored gown with delicate lace details. Cole wore his best suit and could not stop staring at his bride, could not believe that this incredible woman had agreed to be his wife. The reception was held at the town hall, with music and dancing and more food than anyone could possibly eat. Cole danced with Thea until his feet hurt, and even then he did not want to stop. He wanted to hold on to this moment, this perfect day, forever. They spent their wedding night at a small hotel in town, and the next day they moved into a little house that Cole had bought with his savings. It was not much, just 3 rooms and a small porch, but it was theirs. Thea filled it with handmade curtains and quilts, and Cole built furniture for them in his spare time. They planted a small garden in the spring, and on warm evenings they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the mountains. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Cole continued working at the ranch, though he turned down opportunities to go on long cattle drives. He wanted to be home with his wife, did not want to miss a single day of their life together. Thea continued working at the dress shop with her aunt, and their business thrived. Golden kept growing, attracting new residents every month as word spread about the opportunities in Colorado. In the summer of 1879, Thea discovered she was pregnant. Cole was beside himself with joy and also with terror. He worried constantly about Thea's health, about whether he would be a good father, about all the things that could go wrong. But Thea remained calm and confident, even as her belly grew round and she had to stop working at the shop for a while. "Everything will be fine," she would tell him whenever she caught him fretting. "Our baby is going to be healthy and strong, just like his father." Or her mother, Cole would always add, kissing her forehead. Their son was born in March of 1880, on a snowy evening that had Cole pacing the floors of their little house while the midwife attended to Thea. When he finally heard the baby's cry, he burst into the bedroom to find Thea exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. "Meet your son," she said softly, and Cole approached slowly, almost reverently. The baby had a thatch of dark hair, and his eyes, when they fluttered open briefly, were blue like his mother's. "He is perfect," Cole whispered, tears streaming down his face. "You are both perfect." They named him Thomas William Dalton, after both of their fathers. Tommy, as they called him, was a healthy, happy baby who rarely cried and seemed to love being held. Cole discovered a well of tenderness in himself that he had not known existed. He would spend hours just watching his son sleep, marveling at the tiny fingers and toes, the way Tommy would make little sounds in his dreams. Thea proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving, and somehow able to function on very little sleep. She and Cole took turns walking Tommy around the house when he was fussy, singing lullabies and telling him stories. On clear nights, they would take him outside and show him the stars. "See those, Tommy?" Thea would say. "Those are the stars your grandmother watches us from. She would have loved you so much." As Tommy grew from a baby into a toddler, the house filled with his laughter and his endless energy. Cole would come home from the ranch to find his son running to greet him, calling "Papa, Papa," with such enthusiasm that it made every hard day worth it. Mary and Sarah were devoted aunts who spoiled Tommy terribly. Mary had her own baby now, a daughter named Emma, and Sarah was seriously courting a young doctor who had recently moved to Golden. Agatha, who they all called Aunt Aggie, doted on Tommy and insisted on making all of his clothes herself. In 1882, Thea became pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first, and Cole worried even more than he had the first time. But Thea remained optimistic. Even when she was so tired, She could barely keep her eyes open. I know this one is going to be special, she told Cole one evening as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her swollen belly. I can feel it. Their daughter was born in November of 1882, a month earlier than expected. The birth was difficult, and there were a few terrifying hours when Cole feared he might lose both Thea and the baby. But both of them proved to be fighters, and when he finally got to hold his daughter, he felt like his heart had doubled in size. They named her Catherine Rose Dalton, but from the beginning, everyone called her Katie. She had Thea's dark hair and Cole's green eyes, and she was feisty from the start. Where Tommy had been calm and easy, Katie was demanding and spirited. She knew what she wanted and was not afraid to make her needs known. She is going to be a force to be reckoned with, Aggie said fondly, holding the baby while Thea recovered. Just like her mother. Life with two young children was chaotic and exhausting and wonderful. Tommy was a devoted big brother, always wanting to help with Katie, though he was only 2.5 himself. The house was never quiet anymore, filled with the sounds of children playing and crying and laughing. Cole had been promoted to foreman at the ranch, which meant better pay and more responsibility. He was able to provide well for his growing family, and they even managed to save a little money. They talked about maybe buying a bigger house someday, or perhaps a small piece of land where Cole could raise horses. The dress shop continued to flourish, though Thea only worked there part-time now, when Aggie or Cole could watch the children. She loved the creative outlet it provided, loved being able to contribute to the family finances, but her true joy was in her children and her husband. Years passed in a blur of birthdays and holidays and everyday moments that made up a life. Tommy started school and proved to be a quick learner, especially good with numbers. Katie was as spirited as ever, always getting into some sort of mischief, but with such charm that it was hard to stay mad at her. In 1885, Thea became pregnant a third time, and in early 1886, they welcomed another son, whom they named Henry James Dalton. Henry was a perfect blend of his siblings, calm like Tommy, but with Katie's determination. He was a happy baby who seemed content just to observe the world around him. With 3 children under the age of 7, Cole and Thea's lives were busier than ever, but they would not have had it any other way. On their 10th wedding anniversary in December of 1888, Cole arranged for Aggie to watch the children so he could take Thea out for a special evening. They went to the nicest restaurant in Golden, which was quite nice indeed as the town had grown substantially. After dinner, bundled up against the winter cold, Cole drove them out to the canyon where they had first met. The boulder was covered in snow, but Cole had brought blankets, and they wrapped up together, looking at the stars just as they had that first night a decade earlier. "Can you believe it has been 10 years?" Thea said, snuggling against Cole for warmth. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we have been together forever." "I know what you mean," Cole replied, his arm tight around her. "These have been the best 10 years of my life, Thea. Every day with you is a gift." "Even the hard days?" Thea asked with a smile. "Even when Katie is refusing to eat her vegetables, and Tommy is arguing about bedtime, and Henry is cutting teeth, and none of us have slept in weeks?" Cole laughed. "Even then," he confirmed. "Especially then, because we are going through it together. I would not trade a single moment of our life, not even the difficult ones." Thea reached up and kissed him softly. "I love you, Cole Dalton. I love the life we have built together. When I think about that lost girl who was counting stars 10 years ago, I can hardly believe how far I have come. You saved me that night." "No," Cole said firmly. "You saved yourself. You were brave enough to open your heart again, to take a chance on love, even though you had been hurt before. I am just grateful that you chose to take that chance with me." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their breath form clouds in the cold air. Then Thea said, "Do you remember how I told you I was looking for my mother's star?" "I remember everything about that night," Cole replied. I want to tell our children that story someday, Thea said. I want them to know that even when things seem darkest, even when you feel most lost, there is always hope, that sometimes the best things in life come when you stop searching so desperately and just let yourself be open to possibilities. That is a good lesson, Cole agreed, and they have the perfect example of it in their parents. As they sat there under the stars, Cole thought about everything that had happened since that fateful night in 1878. He had been a drifting cowboy with no real ties, no real home. Now he was a husband, a father, a foreman with responsibilities, and a place in the community. He had roots that went deep, a family that depended on him, a wife who loved him with a fierceness that still took his breath away. The life he had built with Thea was not always easy. There were hard times, arguments about money or discipline, or how to handle various challenges. There were nights when the children were sick and they both walked the floors, exhausted and worried. There were moments of doubt and fear and frustration, but through it all, they had each other. They faced every challenge as a team, supporting each other, loving each other, choosing each other every single day. And that, Cole thought, was what real love was. Not the easy passion of new romance, though they still had plenty of that, but the deeper, steadier love that came from building a life together, from weathering storms and celebrating joys, and simply showing up for each other day after day. What are you thinking about? Thea asked, noticing his faraway expression. Just about how lucky I am, Cole replied honestly. About how that night I found you counting stars was the night my real life began. Thea smiled, that beautiful smile that still made Cole's heart skip a beat after all these years. Mine too, she said. Mine too. They stayed out under the stars for another hour, talking about their hopes for their children's futures, about plans to expand the house to accommodate their growing family, about all the years still ahead of them. When they finally headed back to town, the cold having finally driven them to seek warmth, they were both filled with contentment and gratitude. The years continued to unfold. Tommy grew into a serious young man who excelled at mathematics and talked about becoming an engineer someday. Katie was as spirited as ever, with a talent for drawing and painting that Thea encouraged by getting her lessons with a local artist. Henry was quiet but observant, with a love of animals that suggested he might follow in his father's footsteps into ranching. In 1890, at the age of 36, Cole was offered a partnership in the ranch where he had worked for so many years. It was a significant opportunity, one that would secure his family's financial future. He discussed it at length with Thea, worried about the additional responsibility and time it might require. You should do it, Thea said firmly. You have worked so hard, Cole. You deserve this, and we will figure out the rest together, just like we always do. So Cole accepted the partnership, and it proved to be a wise decision. The ranch prospered, and with it, the Dalton family's fortunes improved. They were able to buy a larger house in town, one with enough bedrooms for all three children to have their own space. They had a proper parlor for receiving guests and a big kitchen where the family gathered for meals. Aggie lived with them now, as her health had begun to decline. She still worked at the dress shop, but only a few hours a week. She spent most of her time doting on her great nieces and great nephew, telling them stories about their mother as a young girl and about their grandmother, whom they had never met. Thea took over running the dress shop entirely in 1892 and discovered she had a real head for business. She expanded their offerings to include ready-made clothing for working women, not just custom orders for special occasions. The shop became one of the most successful businesses in Golden, and Thea took great pride in what she and her aunt had built. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the house was peaceful, Cole and Thea would sit together on their front porch, just as they had in their first small house. They would hold hands and talk about their day, sharing the small moments and the big decisions. Sometimes they would go weeks without having a conversation that did not involve children or business or the logistics of running a household. But then they would have an evening like this, reconnected and reminded of why they had fallen in love in the first place. Do you ever miss it? Thea asked one such evening in the summer of 1893. The freedom of the trail? The adventure of it all? Cole considered the question seriously. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, he admitted. When the biggest decision I had to make was which direction to drive the cattle. But no, I do not miss the life itself. Everything I want, everything I need is right here. Even when I am nagging you about fixing the fence or complaining about how much mud the children tracked in, Thea teased. Even then, Cole said with a smile, especially then because it means we have a home to keep up and children healthy enough to play outside. It means we have built something real and lasting. In the fall of 1893, they celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. Their children were growing so fast it made Cole's head spin. Tommy was 13 now, tall and gangly, his voice changing. Katie was 11, all energy and opinions and artistic talent. Henry was 7, still their baby, though he hated being called that. Cole took Thea back to their canyon again that anniversary. It had become a tradition, this pilgrimage to the place where they had met. The boulder was the same, though the landscape around it had changed as Golden expanded its reach. They brought a proper blanket this time, and a basket of food, making a whole evening of it. 15 years, Thea marveled, leaning against Cole as the stars began to appear. We have been married longer than I knew my parents. This is the longest relationship I have ever had. And we are just getting started, Cole said. We have got at least 50 more years ahead of us. 50 more years of your terrible jokes? Thea asked with mock horror. 50 more years of your nagging about the fence, Cole countered. They both laughed, and then they were kissing, still feeling that spark that had drawn them together all those years ago. The passion between them had not faded with time and children and responsibility. If anything, it had deepened, become richer and more meaningful. I want to tell you something, Thea said when they finally broke apart. Something I have never told anyone, not even you. Cole felt a flicker of concern. What is it? That night you found me counting stars, Thea began slowly. I was not just looking for my mother's star. I was trying to decide if I wanted to keep living. Cole's breath caught in his throat. Thea, I was not actively planning anything, she rushed to clarify. But I was so lost, so tired of feeling alone and adrift. I kept thinking that maybe it would be easier to just give up. And then you appeared, and you were so kind, so genuinely interested in hearing my story. You made me feel seen for the first time in years. You gave me a reason to want to wake up the next morning. Tears were streaming down her face now, and Cole pulled her close, his own eyes stinging. Why did you never tell me this before? Because I was ashamed, Thea admitted. Because I did not want you to think I was weak or broken, but I realize now that I was not weak. I was grieving and I was struggling, but I was strong enough to accept help when it was offered. I was strong enough to open my heart to love again. You are the strongest person I know, Cole said fiercely, and I am so grateful, so incredibly grateful that you chose to stay, that you chose to give us a chance. They held each other for a long time, and Cole thought about how fragile life could be, how easily things could have gone differently. If he had not heard Thea humming that night, if he had not been curious enough to investigate, if he had not taken the time to talk to a stranger under the stars, his entire life would be different. He would have missed out on the greatest love he had ever known. Promise me something, he said into her hair. Promise me that if you ever feel that way again, you will tell me. Promise me we will face it together. I promise, Thea said. But Cole, I have not felt that way in 15 years. You and the children, our life together, it has given me every reason to want to be here. You saved my life that night, whether you realized it or not. Then we saved each other, Cole replied, because I was lost too in my own way. I was just drifting through life, not really connecting to anything or anyone. You gave me a purpose, a home, a reason to put down roots. They stayed out late that night, talking about everything and nothing, reconnecting in the way that busy parents with full lives sometimes forgot to do. When they finally headed home, they felt closer than they had in months, reminded of the foundation their entire life was built on. The years rolled on, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. In 1895, Tommy graduated from school at the top of his class and announced his intention to go to university in Denver to study engineering. It was hard for Cole and Thea to imagine their oldest leaving home, but they were proud of his ambitions and supportive of his dreams. Katie continued to develop her artistic talents and began talking about perhaps opening her own studio someday. Henry started helping out at the ranch with his father, proving to have a natural way with horses. Aggie passed away peacefully in her sleep in the winter of 1896. She was 72 years old and had lived to see Thea happy and settled with a family of her own. At the funeral, Thea spoke about how Aggie had given her a home when she had nowhere else to go, had taught her a trade, had shown her that it was possible to build a new life even after loss. Cole held Thea as she cried, understanding that Aggie's death had reopened old wounds about losing her parents. But they got through it together, just as they had gotten through everything else. They supported each other through the grief and found comfort in their children and the life they had built. Tommy came home from Denver for the funeral and stayed for 2 weeks, which helped ease some of Thea's sadness. In 1898, Tommy graduated from university with honors and immediately got a job with a mining company, designing equipment to make extractions safer and more efficient. Cole could barely understand half of what his son talked about, but he was immensely proud. His boy, the son of a cowboy, was making his mark on the world through his mind and his education. Katie, at 16, was becoming a beautiful young woman with admirers starting to circle. Cole found this development both inevitable and deeply concerning, though Thea just laughed at his protectiveness. "She is smart and she has a good head on her shoulders," Thea assured him. "We raised her to make good choices." Henry, at 12, was becoming an excellent horseman and was already talking about wanting to buy into the ranch partnership when he was old enough. Cole loved the idea of one of his children following in his footsteps, of keeping the family legacy going. As they approached their 20th wedding anniversary in 1898, Cole found himself reflecting on all they had built together. They had raised 3 children into good people. They had successful careers. They had a beautiful home and deep roots in the community. They had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs. And through it all, they had loved each other with a constancy that Cole knew was rare and precious. For their anniversary, Cole surprised Thea with something special. He had commissioned a local craftsman to build a small cabin out near their canyon, the place where they had met. It was simple but sturdy, with a fireplace and a comfortable bed, and big windows that looked out at the stars. "I thought we could use a place to escape to sometimes," Cole explained as he showed it to Thea for the first time. "Somewhere that is just ours, where we can reconnect away from the noise and business of town." Thea was speechless, walking through the small space with tears in her eyes. "It is perfect," she finally said. "Oh, Cole, it is absolutely perfect." They spent their anniversary night in the cabin, making love and talking and watching the stars through the window. In the morning, they lay wrapped in each other's arms, neither wanting to break the spell of this perfect moment. 20 years, Thea said softly. "Sometimes I still cannot believe how lucky we got." "It was not luck," Cole replied. "It was you being brave enough to be vulnerable that night. It was me being curious enough to investigate. It was both of us choosing to take a chance on love." "Do you remember what I said that first night?" Thea asked. "When you found me counting stars." "You said you were looking for your mother's star," Cole replied. "That she had told you she would watch over you from there." "I was looking for guidance that night," Thea said. "I needed my mother to tell me what to do, how to keep going. And then you appeared, and I realized that maybe that was her answer. Maybe she sent you to help me find my way." Cole kissed the top of her head. I like that thought that she brought us together. I think she did, Thea said. And I think she has been watching over us all these years, proud of the life we have built and the family we have raised. They spent the entire weekend at the cabin, and when they finally returned to town, they both felt renewed and reconnected. It became their special place, somewhere they would retreat to whenever life got too overwhelming or they needed to remember why they had fallen in love in the first place. The turn of the century brought changes to Golden and to the Dalton family. The town now had electric streetlights and was talking about getting telephone lines. The ranch prospered as demand for cattle remained high. Tommy got married to a smart young woman named Elizabeth, who worked as a secretary at the mining company. Katie enrolled in an art school in Denver, determined to make a career of her passion. Henry, at 14, was already as tall as his father and showing signs of being an even better horseman. Cole, at 46, had some gray in his hair and lines around his eyes, but he was still strong and healthy. Thea, at 41, was as beautiful to him as she had been at 21, maybe more so. He loved the way she had aged, the wisdom and experience that showed in her face, the confidence she had gained over the years. In 1902, they became grandparents when Tommy and Elizabeth had a daughter they named Rose, after Thea's mother. Holding that tiny baby, seeing his son as a father, Cole felt the circle of life completing itself. He understood now how his own parents must have felt, watching him grow and build a family of his own. Katie came home from art school with a young man in tow, a fellow artist named Vincent, who clearly adored her. Cole tried not to be too intimidating during the visit, though it was hard. Thea had to remind him several times that Katie was 20 and perfectly capable of choosing a good partner. You picked me when you were younger than that, she pointed out. That was different, Cole protested. How? Because I was a good choice, Cole said, then laughed at himself. All right, I see your point. Henry, at 16, was seriously courting a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property. Her name was Anne, and she was as horse crazy as Henry was. Cole and Thea both approved of the match, seeing in the young couple some echo of their own early romance. In 1903, Cole and Thea celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary. A quarter century together, a lifetime of memories, and still going strong. Their children threw them a surprise party, inviting everyone they had ever known. The entire town seemed to show up to celebrate the couple who had become something of a legend in Golden. Tell us the story, someone called out during the party. Tell us how you met. Cole looked at Thea, and she nodded with a smile. Together, they told the story of the cowboy who found a young woman counting stars, looking for her mother's star. They told about how they had talked until dawn, about how they had fallen in love slowly and surely. They left out the darker parts, the depths of Thea's despair that night, but they conveyed the magic of that first meeting, the sense that something momentous had begun. When they finished, there was not a dry eye in the room. Their love story had become part of Golden's history, a testament to the power of chance meetings and open hearts. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Cole and Thea sat on their porch as they had so many times over the years. 25 years, Cole said, shaking his head in wonder. I was just thinking, we have been married longer than I have been alive without you. You have been part of my life longer than you have not been. And I cannot imagine it any other way, Thea replied, lacing her fingers through his. You are woven into every part of who I am now. When I think about my life, I think about it in terms of before you and after you. And the after is so much better. I feel the same way, Cole said. You made me a better man, Thea. You gave me purpose and direction. You taught me what real love looks like. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge as the sky darkened. Cole thought about all the nights they had spent like this, watching the stars together. It had become their thing, their way of reconnecting and remembering where they had started. Do you still look for your mother's star? Cole asked softly. Thea smiled. Not in the way I used to. Now I see her in every star, just like you said that first night. But more than that, I see her in our children. I see her kindness in Tommy, her creativity in Katie, her stubbornness in Henry. I see her in the life we have built, in the love we share. She is not just in the stars anymore. She is everywhere. Cole pulled her close, grateful beyond words for this woman, for the life they had created together, for every moment they had shared. I love you, Thea Dalton. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. I love you too, Cole Dalton, Thea replied. Forever and always, no matter what. The years ahead would bring more changes, more challenges, more joys. Tommy and Elizabeth would have two more children. Katie would marry her artist and open a successful gallery in Denver. Henry would buy into the ranch partnership and eventually marry Anne, starting a new generation of Daltons to work the land. Cole and Thea would become gray-haired and slower, but never less in love. They would spend countless more nights in their cabin by the canyon, counting stars and remembering that first meeting. They would hold each other through illness and loss, celebrate grandchildren and great-grandchildren, build a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. But through it all, through every high and low, they would have each other. They would have that foundation built on a single night under the stars when a lost girl was looking for her mother's star and a wandering cowboy was looking for a reason to stop wandering. They had found each other in that vast wilderness, and they had built a love that would last a lifetime. Years later, when they were old and gray, sitting on their porch watching yet another sunset, Thea would turn to Cole and say, "Do you know what I realized? All those years ago, I was not really looking for my mother's star. I was looking for a sign that I was not alone, that someone was watching over me, that there was still good in the world." "And did you find it?" Cole would ask, though he knew the answer. "I found you," Thea would reply simply. "And you were all of those things and more." Cole would take her weathered hand in his and bring it to his lips, just as he had done countless times over the decades. "I found you too," he would say, "my star in the darkness." And they would sit there together as the stars emerged one by one, two souls who had found each other against all odds and had built a beautiful life together. Their love story would be passed down through generations of Daltons, a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the simplest moments, and that true love, when you are brave enough to reach for it, can transform everything. On a cool autumn evening in 1920, Cole Dalton passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 66, with Thea holding his hand. He had lived a full, rich life surrounded by love, and he died knowing he had made a difference in the world. Thea grieved deeply, but she found comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the memories they had created together, in the knowledge that they had been blessed with 42 years of marriage. She lived another 5 years, spending her final days surrounded by family, telling stories about the cowboy who had found her counting stars all those years ago. When she passed in 1925 at the age of 66, her last words were reported to be, "I can see the star now. I can see her. And Cole is there too, waiting for me." They were buried side by side in the Golden Cemetery, on a hill where you could see the mountains, and on clear nights, the stars. Their gravestone read simply, "Cole and Thea Dalton. They found each other under the stars and loved until the end." Their children would tend the grave for years, bringing flowers and telling their own children about the grandparents who had shown them what true love looked like. The cabin by the canyon would remain in the family, a place where Daltons would go for generations to reconnect and remember. And on starry nights, people in Golden would sometimes tell the story of the cowboy and the girl counting stars, a love story that had become legend. The dress shop that Thea had built with her aunt would continue operating for another 30 years, run by Katie and then by Katie's daughter. The ranch that Cole had helped build would remain in the Dalton family, passed down through Henry's line. Tommy's descendants would go on to become engineers and architects, building bridges and buildings across the West. But more than any business or property or professional legacy, Cole and Thea's real legacy was the love they had shared and the example they had set. They had shown everyone who knew them that love was worth the risk, that opening your heart even after loss was an act of courage, that building a life with someone required daily choice and commitment and effort, but that it was worth every bit of that work. They had proven that a chance meeting under the stars could change everything, that kindness to a stranger could blossom into a lifetime of love, that two broken people could come together and create something whole and beautiful. Their story would inspire countless others in Golden and beyond to be brave in love, to take chances, to believe in the possibility of finding their person, even in the most unlikely circumstances. And somewhere in the vast expanse of stars above Golden, Colorado, perhaps there really was a star where a mother watched over her daughter and where a cowboy and his bride were finally reunited, counting stars together for all eternity.